In just a few days, we're going to have Taigong Sanctuary dropping over here on the NA version of the game, and that's going to bring a highly anticipated unit in Tai Gong that I know a lot of people have been waiting for ever since he was announced 2 years ago, because not only is he really gas in the story, but he's also a very strong quick unit, which we have been getting a lot of this year because, you know, they dropped Koyenskaya of the Light, who is a really supremely strong buster unit, but they're like, hey, don't forget about quick. Here's Izumo, here's Tai Gong. But one of the things that I do want people to consider about this unit is that, like Avenger Nitocris, you know, the Nitocris Altar, they are not limited in any capacity, meaning if we get another choose your own 5-star ticket, he's more than likely going to be on that, which with the next download campaign over on JP being the big 30 million download campaign, we might see if we're going to be getting something like that. So that is something to consider. And also, he could randomly appear in your summons because, again, he's not story locked, he's not limited. So if that does affect your judgment for, say, Koyen Dark, who is going to be limited and will be coming out in about 1 or 2 weeks, that might be something to consider. But if you are a quick enjoyer, then I think this is the servant for you. They made this guy supremely powerful. Whether you want to use him for farming or you want to use him in challenge quests, he will perform very well in either one of those. And keep in mind, all the gameplay that I'm showing is not even him at his best. I have to plug soon in a waiver instead of, say, another Scotty or even an Oberon, and I don't even have my own ruler Scotty to use. And so the fact that he's able to perform as well as he is with an improper setup, imagine not having your own Castoria and the guy is still looping fine, or not having your own Koyenskaya and they're still able to buster farm. Except it's more impressive because Taigong is a quick unit, and quick units are in a much worse spot, especially right now over on the NA version of the game with no ruler Scotty, so it does show how good this guy is going to age and that he's going to get better as time goes on. But enough jibber jabber, let's start moving into this video, starting off with his hits. Of which he's one of those kind of really broken servants that is very unassuming with their hits. You look at it, 4 hits on the double quick cards, 3 on the double arts cards, 0.6% NP gain. It doesn't look like it's going to be anything super special. Even the hits on his AoE quick NP seem to be a little bit unassuming because it's only 6 hits. It's not the broken 10 hits that you would assume a really strong quick looping servant would want to have. But trust me, it's enough because this guy has, again, very basic skills, but once you start kind of wrapping your head around what these actually do, they're all very, very strong. As many people know, the guy is rocking double power mods, he's got NP support, and then if we start looking at his first skill, he gives probably one of the strongest support buffs in the game, in that it gives you a 15% quick buff, a 15% attack buff, and a 15% NP damage buff. All of those on a 3-turn clock on a 7-turn cooldown is ridiculous because that is a triple buff. If you don't know, different buff types in FGO kind of calculate separately. Some of them add into each other, some of them multiply into each other. And so by giving yourself numerous different buff types, especially for something like this where it could be applied to other party members that also might be doing damage, say Ruler Scotty, who's going to be coming out in Summer 7, who does have a damaging NP, this might even allow her to do some decent damage if you get to a position where you need to fire her NP, because to be fair, it does reduce the enemy's NP charge, so like it has a little bit of survivability, and she has the lawful power mod, so if you're fighting a boss that has the lawful alignment and you give him this buff, Scotty might be able to put out some really good damage herself, but it's also very good for Taigong because he gives himself every single buff type. As I just mentioned earlier, he already gives himself double power mods on the second skill, which we'll get into in just a second, but this is one of just the better support skills in the game. I know it's not the insane like 50% like quick buff or 50% arts, but just the fact that you are triple buffing everybody in the party for basically free is absolutely insane. So if you do want to pair him with other quick damaging servants, even someone like Van Gogh, who doesn't have a damaging NP, but she can take advantage of the attack buff and the quick buff, stuff like that can even be taken advantage of as well, and can be very strong in setups, which I think is one of the appeals for Taigong, is that you can not only use him as your primary DPS or your primary farmer, but you could also use him as a pseudo DPS / support type unit, which again I think is very strong. Moving into that aforementioned second skill, he's able to seal all enemy skills for 1 turn, which I do like. That gives him a little bit of tech against some bosses. And then he gives himself a 50% power mod against divinity and against demonic enemies for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. Again, giving him some very solid damage against these guys. I believe I showed him just going against demonic people in this video, and he still does very well. Because obviously, spoiler alert, his divinity power mod is going to be a little bit bigger on his NP, but that 50% power mod against demonic is not to be looked down upon, because again, he's giving himself all of those buffs on his first skill. He has that nice 11% quick buff that's going to add into the first skill buff for himself as well, so his quick buff is deceptively bigger than it's looking, plus the additional buffs he's giving himself, and he has double power mods that have pretty good reach. Because while there's not a ton of demonic servants, there are a lot of demonic enemies, and I'll be flashing them up on screen right now. You'll be seeing a lot of people that you see in farming nodes you're going to be able to run into with some regularity, and if you don't run into these guys, then you might run into one of the many divinity servants that you could run into, or some of the divinity bosses, because there's not really a whole lot of divinity, free quest enemies, but there are quite a lot of bosses that he will be able to excel at. So I do like the dichotomy that demonic gives him a lot of free quest coverage, but not a lot of servant coverage, but divinity gives him a lot of servant coverage and not a lot of free quest coverage. I do like that kind of overlapping coverage we have going on with him. And again, sealing the enemy skills is very strong, because Scotty and Ruler Scotty don't offer a whole lot of protection themselves as quick supports, and so being able to slow down the enemy, maybe they can't fire their NP skill, maybe they can't fire their survivability because you fired this, that can also be very strong. However, as if addressing the issue of Scotty really never firing her NP, there is his third skill, which functionally for him is a 50% battery because it charges his own gauge by 30% and the party's by 20%. So he's getting 50 because obviously he's included in the party, but then giving your caster Scotties, especially since she just got her NP buff over on NA, which is actually fairly strong, giving her that free 20% might help her in firing that NP to give you that one instance of dodge, the attack buff, the big crit damage buff, and maybe in some very niche boss fights, the insta-kill immunity. That could actually be very strong, especially, again, if you're pairing him with other quick DPS, someone like Van Gogh. If you want to use that example, this helps her even more into getting to her NP, which then, if you've ever used Van Gogh, gets the ball rolling, and then she starts being really strong, and you know how it goes. But it's also nice for some weird 90 plus setups where if you need Taigong to kind of wipe a node, but then your single target is just a little shy on their NP, it's very strong that one of your DPSs can give your other DPS extra NP. It's just a very strong thing that he's able to do. Again, has applications in CQs, but also has applications in more difficult nodes. And then obviously for normal 333 nodes, you just use this as a 50% battery so you can just farm regularly. But aside from that, it's just good, functionally 50% battery with extra support. Let's move over to his NP, which seems really simple, but again, can be very good in farming or CQs because you're getting that big power mod against divinity enemies, free 150%. So functionally with the second skill, you just have free 200% power mod against divinity enemies, which is why when I show the damage charts, you'll see that his divinity power mod by itself is ridiculously strong. And that's not even the height of the damage he's going to reach, because his overcharge effect over here is reducing all enemies' quick resistance by 20% for 3 turns, meaning that subsequent NPs that you fire after the first one are going to start dealing more and more damage, which shouldn't be that hard when you're rocking a 50% battery and you've got double caster Scotty, and God forbid we finally get ruler Scotty, or even in the meantime you plug suit in someone like Oberon, you're going to absolutely trash whoever you're going in to fight. And I know in the background I've mostly been showing him farming because he is an AoE quick unit. I know that's what most people are going to use him for, but you can bring him in there for typical Scotty fashion of 3 turning bosses and he will do rather well. The only things that he's really lacking is his own hardline survivability, something like an invincibility, a dodge, damage cut, something along those lines. And I would say a crit buff, but if you're using Scotty or Ruler Scotty when she does come out, they will give him the crit buffs he needs to do a lot of damage. I would say lean more into Caster Scotty because he obviously can't take advantage of that big Buster crit bonus that the Ruler one is giving because he only has the 1 Buster card. But in some of the looping demonstrations I was showing, I would just not fire the plug suit attack buff, so I would know that my Taigong, because he's only NP1, not Grailed, not Gold Photo or anything, it's pretty bare bones Taigong. And so I knew that there were some enemies that he wouldn't be able to kill with his NP, but I wanted to be able to show how he would crit And his crits can get really nasty, right? He can be very, very strong with those quick crits especially. And the refund on him is not bad either. Now, is he worth rolling for? That's a whole different question. I can sing praises for this guy all day long. I mean, I've been talking about how much I love using this unit for the last 2 years. I rolled for him on JP without a second thought. But the problem is, and the main thing that's going against him is that he is a quick unit, which, while I am one of the few people that does try to defend quick, they are just not in a good position compared to Arts and Buster. With Arts, you don't really need to plug suit anybody out. You don't need to plug suit in Oberon. You can if you need to, but it's good enough on its own. And then Buster, you don't have to do that either. If you have a maximum broken scope and you just use Atlas Academy, you can just kind of use your double Koyan Skayas and get through as is. But then if you do decide to plug suit in Oberon and go that route, you get so much more out of it, because not only are you getting that big NP damage buff, but he's also giving you that huge Buster buff, whereas Quick can play with Oberon, it just doesn't feel as good, where Taigong kind of mitigates that a little bit because he does have his own NP damage buff, so he does work a little bit better with Oberon, but again, not being able to do stuff like Black Grail farming really does hurt a lot of the quick units, although some of them, like say Bradamonte or Assassin Okita, they're starting to get better and better at that. We're starting to see more and more quick units be able to do Black Grail farming, which is very strong, but I don't know if I could recommend going for Taigong just off the merits if you want to use him as a farmer. Now, if you want to bring him to boss fights, I think go ahead. Go ahead. This guy is so much fun to bring in those because you just load up on buffs, especially if they're divine, and you just annihilate them. AoE, bro, we're doing single target damage. We're destroying those people. But if you're looking for a looper, I would tell you to probably save your Saint Quartz for Koyan Light, who is coming back around for New Year's, and spend your Saint Quartz on that, because getting the Buster farming lady is going to make your life a whole lot easier, because you kind of just ignore a lot of the 90+ mechanics. You kind of just Buster farm your way through it without even really regarding any of it. But even with all that being said, this guy is getting my A+ stamp of approval. The only things that I think is keeping him out of S tier for me personally is that lack of survivability, because in CQs that can be very devastating, because again, while he does try to help Caster Scotty get to her NP, not having your own way to keep yourself alive can be detrimental in some situations, and I do notice it, and I have lost some fights because of it. Doesn't make the guy any less fun to use, but it can come up and be a little annoying. And then not having your own crit buff. I think not having your own crit buff is a little weird in current year, even though, again, I did mention that Caster Scotty will take care of that. That is only for the 2 quick cards. That crit buff does not apply to everything else, although if you can get her NP, then it's not really a problem, because then it's just a general crit buff. But there are just little things that I think keep him out of being in that upper echelon of the broken, goated guys. But that also might be me playing against my bias, because I do like Taigong a lot. So maybe I'm holding him at A+ instead of S tier out of my own bias, but I'll let you guys let me know in the comments down below what you think of this guy. If you're going to be rolling, let me know if you get him. Come back to the video and be like, don't worry, ZTL, I got the guy in 1 ticket, and you know what? I'm happy for you. But with all that being said, make sure you leave a like on the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel for that daily FGO content, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace, late guys.